Hello.
Hello and welcome again to Well in the Wilderness this Friday evening. I'm Sue, this is Nick.
Hello.
And today happens to be our very own Paul Holden's birthday. Happy birthday, Paul. I hope you're having a great day. So it is the 1st of May, which makes it exactly 4 months from the 1st of January. And my question today is, if you made any New Year's resolutions, those are kind of like promises we make to ourselves, have you kept them? Have you kept them? Or maybe, how long did you manage to keep any New Year's resolutions that you made? I'm rubbish at sticking to these, I'll say that. Our readings from the Bible book of Acts for today and tomorrow are about how God made promises hundreds of years ago to people way back then, and through those people, to us today. And unlike us, God does always keep his promises. Most of chapter 7, as we're going to read tonight, is actually a speech by a guy called Stephen, who we heard in last night's chapter was a man full of God's grace and power, it says, and who was on trial for speaking about Jesus. And this chapter relates his defense, so the hearers are not a terribly friendly bunch, as we'll discover tomorrow. The chapter starts as a group of people have come to the religious lawyers, as it were, of the day, charging this Stephen with speaking about Jesus. It's quite a long passage. If you can follow it in a Bible or on your phone, that's great, or you can just listen. I hope you won't mind, but I've got some props to help me there we go, to indicate the ups and the downs and the people mentioned in the passage. So, fasten your seatbelts and take it away, Nick.
Then the high priest asked Stephen, "Are these charges true?" To this he replied, "Brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran. 'Leave your country and your people,' God said, 'and go into the land I will show you.' So he left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. After the death of his father, God sent him to the land where you are now living. He gave him no inheritance here, not even enough ground to set his foot on. But God promised him that he and his descendants after him would possess the land, even though at that time Abraham had no child. God spoke to him in this way: 'For 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves,' God said, 'and afterward they will come out of that country and worship me in this place.' Then he gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision. And Abraham became the father of Isaac and circumcised him 8 days after his birth. Later, Isaac became the father of Jacob. And Jacob became the father of 12 brothers, one of whom was called Joseph. He was the one with the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Because the brothers were jealous of Joseph, they sold him as a slave into Egypt. But God was with him and rescued him from all his troubles. He gave Joseph wisdom and enabled him to gain the goodwill of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So Pharaoh made him ruler over Egypt and all his palace. Then a famine struck all Egypt and Canaan, bringing great suffering, and our ancestors couldn't find any food. When Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, he sent our forefathers on their first visit. On their second visit, Joseph told his brothers who he was, and Pharaoh learned about Joseph's family. After this, Joseph sent for his father Jacob and his whole family, 75 in all. Then Jacob went down to Egypt, where he and our ancestors died. Their bodies were brought back to Shechem and placed in the tomb that Abraham had brought from the sons of Hamor at Shechem for a certain sum of money. As the time grew near for God to fulfill the promise to Abraham, the number of our people living in Egypt had greatly increased. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came into power in Egypt. He dealt treacherously with our people and oppressed our ancestors by forcing them to throw out their newborn babies so that they would die. At that time Moses was born, and he was no ordinary child. For 3 months he was cared for by his family. When he was placed outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in speech and action. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his own people, the Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian, so he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they didn't. The next day, Moses came upon 2 Israelites who were fighting. He tried to reconcile them by saying, "Men, you are brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other?" But the man who was mistreating the other pushed Moses aside and said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" When Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had 2 sons. After 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to Moses in the flames of a burning bush in the desert near Mount Sinai. When he saw this, he was amazed at the sight. As he went over to get a closer look, he heard the Lord say, "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses trembled with fear, but he did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. I have indeed seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their groaning, and I have come down to set them free. Now come, I will send you back to Egypt."
End of part 1. I hope you managed to follow all that. There are ups and downs. That was what that was meant to indicate, just to keep us on track. Ups and downs, times when it seemed like God was far off and had forgotten about his people, just like there are for us. But for me, seeing how God has kept his promises over all of past human history gives me a real sense that I can trust him for my bit of it into the future. Hang in there for part 2 tomorrow night. Thanks for listening. Have a great Saturday. Bye.